Hello, I'm byLonceLaMon. Welcome to AdjusterCom. It's Monday, January 7th, 2013. Well, last Friday, before the weekend, Kelly Soo Park appeared in court once again. Her trial hasn't started yet. I got there 10 minutes before the courtroom was to open, and nobody was in the hallway. I was shocked. Usually her whole family is there. Her entourage of her mother, her aunt, her uncle, her friends, the various personalities that are part of her milieu and entourage, gone. So I thought, okay, I got my day wrong. Schedules change. So before I totally panicked, I went in the ladies' room, and while I was in there, in the handicap stall, somebody walked in. I heard him get into one of the other stalls. So when I left, I saw faithful Tom, Kelly's new husband. Well, he's not so new anymore. It's been a few months, or a couple of months since they've been married. I guess that's new. And he was waiting for her outside the door. So I knew that Kelly Soo was there. Soon Mark Kasabian showed up and George Bueller. They waited outside. George Bueller talked on his cell phone, and the courtroom opened, and we all went in and waited a long time. There were two other cases that were heard before Kelly Soo Park, and one of those cases was for a couple of heroin dealers. This is what goes on in the criminal courts. And the defense attorney was an old acquaintance of mine who was in my circle of friends at USC in the early 70s. His name is Christopher Cheney. It was good to see him. He looked good. I know Los Angeles. I know the people. Have a long history in LA. So Kelly Soo Park's case was called, and George Bueller immediately stated that he was requesting a continuance, a 1050, and he needs a continuance for his answer to the district attorney's motion to admit other act evidence. Now, this other act evidence is about what the DA has been alleging, that Kelly Soo Park, in all of her business dealings, would intimidate people, threaten people, strong-arm people. She was what Ueda described as a female James Bond. She would get the job done and scare and frighten and intimidate people. So the DA wants to enter these other acts into the evidence. And George Bueller needs more time. Well, Kathleen Kennedy got bent about that. So she says, that's not okay with me. I'm starting a trial. I don't have the time, and today was the perfect day, and I don't really see a good time until the end of February. So the judge is exasperated because this case is taking too much time. It's been almost 5 years since poor Juliana Redding was murdered, and her poor parents. They're waiting and waiting and waiting, and it will be 5 years on the 15th of March, and the trial won't even have started by then, because now the judge has moved the trial to start on the 18th of March. George Bueller, Kelly Soo's defense lawyer, wanted the 25th because of the conflict with his other trial. So that was argued, and things moved on. The district attorney discussed her discovery. Her name is Stacy Okun-Weiss, of bank records. The district attorney is really looking through bank records, and they want to follow the money trail, obviously. So more bank records are coming out of discovery. Also, the defense wants to do more DNA testing. Clearly, they're going to test the DNA ad nauseum until they can find some doubt that this is Kelly Soo Park's DNA. So they're looking for more DNA testing in order to find some reasonable doubt. They're going to attack the evidence and attack the evidence and attack the evidence as much as they can. What they did a couple of months ago, well, Mark Kasabian stood up in court and argued against the wiretaps. He came up with an argument that these wiretaps that heard Kelly on her cell phone in conversation with her sister, in conversation with other people that were done shortly after her arrest and I think before her arrest, were illegal, were illegitimate, and so Mark Kasabian is arguing to have that evidence thrown out. Well, he did argue that a couple of months ago. So, with the way things are, with Kelly Soo Park having signed a waiver of conflict of interest, because Dr. Ueda, who is believed to have paid for this hit on the victim, Juliana Redding, he is paying the defense lawyers. So how can the defense lawyers pin the crime on him? You don't bite the hand that feeds you. So their only method is going to be, obviously, to attack the evidence. So they're going to make motions now to have all the evidence they can thrown out and to test the DNA until they're blue in the face, until they can find some doubt that this is Kelly Soo Park's DNA. That's what I think. Well, I didn't quite understand what George Buehler was doing in asking for a continuance, and he made some comment that this was a tricky part of the law. So in the late afternoon, I called him on his cell phone and asked him to explain. And he's very polite, and he very graciously answered me and told me, we're opposing the DA's motion to admit other act evidence, because it's sometimes a tricky area of the law. There are certain things that Ms. Park allegedly did in connection with business dealings that had nothing to do with the victim in this case. But the prosecution claims that Ms. Park does aggressive things in business negotiations, and they think they should be admitted to show a possible motive for what happened in this case. That's the basic gist of their motion, and we're opposing it because I think it's nonsense. So George Buehler stated, it's nonsense. Well, I know about Dr. Ueda's aggressive actions and how manipulative he is. Just in December, he filed another court order against me, ordering me to take down 32 articles that are about him or mention him. And what he does is he tries to catch me off guard. He sends them first to my service providers. In this case, he sent it to my domain name registrar. Well, one of them. He doesn't know that I have 4 or 5, but he sent it to one of them and did it before notifying me, and then he sent it to my network engineer who runs my domain name server. So, of course, my network engineer has a condition that most people have, and I call it litophobia. Litophobia is a phrase I've coined, and it means fear of litigation. People are very afraid of being dragged into a courtroom, being involved in litigation, having to pay a lawyer, having to pay court costs, having to be stuck with this enormous expense, and having it decimate them financially. So Ueda preys on people's fears, and he preyed on my fear, or he attempted to prey on my fears back when he, in 2011, got my domain name suspended for over 1 month. Foolishly, Network Solutions abided by the order when my attorney told me it would never happen. But I knew that it could, because sometimes clients know more than their lawyers. Well, I got a judgment, here it is, from a superior court, small claims Division, and Network Solutions has a judgment against them for over $5,000 for suspending my domain name. What the judge stated was, number one, Lebanon has no jurisdiction over businesses in the United States of America. So he cited the jurisdiction issue. Second, he said, you weren't notified. See, UADA notified the domain name registrar, Network Solutions, but didn't notify me. He did it according to this protocol, and he manipulated it because I'm guessing that in Lebanon that one has to be served physically. And so he sent this DHL package and tried to serve it upon me, but he couldn't find it. He would run into my mailbox owners who don't accept packages for me, and they don't sign registered or legal documents on my behalf. They don't have that authority. So the DL package tried to chase me down, but I guess like UADA, I'm also on the lam. They can't find me. So UADA didn't anticipate that I would know that even with a suspended domain name, all I had to do was point my website to another domain name. In anticipation of his actions, I had already registered adjustercom.com as a domain name. Domain name is not a website. It's just a name, only a name. But UADA and his attorney don't understand this. So it took me 24 hours to simply go into my DNS server, change adjuster.com to adjustercom.com, point the name to my IP number of my server, wait the 24 hours for the caching system to propagate the new DNS settings all over the internet, and my website came up again at adjustercom.com. UADA didn't expect that I would outsmart him, but I did. And in his lawsuit here it is in Arabic. You can see that. There's other pages to that, but I only printed out one of them since I don't read Arabic. Here it is in the English translation, and in it he accuses me of fraud. He says that I fraudulently did not obey the order and keep my website down for 10 days plus a month. Of course I didn't. I don't recognize the legal authority of Lebanon. I'm not under any obligation to obey Sharia law. Lebanon has no right to reach across the entire globe and to impose its laws upon me here in the United States in the Western Hemisphere. So UADA expected to stop my publication and did not succeed. He's a dangerous man, so the fear he tried to instill in me and of losing my website, of having it down for over a month, having me lose all that advertising revenue, because how am I supported as a publisher and as a journalist? I'm supported by advertising. So he expected that I would back down, never write anything about the Kelly Soo Park case, never write anything about him, because in his court order, he demands that I never write anything about him ever again. And until I agree to do that, he is going to suspend my domain name by sending these court orders to my domain name registrars, sending them to my network engineer and scaring him. And that's how he gains power, by intimidation, by threat, by terrifying people with the threat of litigation, the threat of physical harm, and yes, even the threat of death. So, thank you for listening. Now, the court has decided the new trial date is set for March 18th, 2013. But we'll be back in court to hear George Bueller's answer to the motion of other act evidence on February the 28th at 8:30 a.m. I'm LonceLaMon, and this is a Jestercom.